Fish Stripes Live back at you for the start of this series. Happy Memorial Day weekend, just getting started, and the start of a new Marlins road trip. Eli Sussman, Kevin Barral, Isaac Azoot, Alex Carver, may even have Ethan Badowski later on previewing this series in historic Fenway Park. The first time in probably 3 years, I think, that they've been to Fenway. And the first time they're trying to win a game at Fenway for the first time in 10 years, the Marlins are. And they've got some things working for them heading into the series. We'll just start right off the bat with the biggest one, which is, as expected, Starling Marte back from the injured list. Missed 35 games, a big chunk of the season. They did a decent job, without him, all things considered, but obviously a big boost to the team in a bunch of ways. Isaac, we'll just start with you just on that. How happy you are that he's back, what we're expecting from him. What's the difference that he can make just as one guy in this lineup as their everyday center fielder now?
Yeah, what he provides is, immeasurable, but it always seems like it comes at a cost. Every time, we get someone back, it seems like someone else has to get sidelined. But no, Marte back, that's a real true 5-tool guy that you're adding back to your lineup in the number 2 spot. In your center field, you have a cannon of an arm. Sorry about that. You have, it's just, like I said, immeasurable that's having back in the 2 spot, and it's definitely going to help us out in the long term and short term.
Yeah, this was our best batter until he got out with the injury. He's back. He's at batting .316 right now. We need this, especially tonight against a good Boston team.
Yeah, you never want to see anybody get hurt, but I guess the long-term ramification would be if the Marlins do want to extend him, can they save a little bit because he has missed a little bit of time? It's possible. I do think the Marlins will try to extend him, see what happens there. But yeah, definitely good to have him back because I think he's one of the most underrated players in baseball. Does everything, above average speed, arms good, bat's really good. Yeah, just a guy that was not talked about when he was playing with Pittsburgh and is still not talked about now, but he definitely should be and was on an all-star path before he got hurt. So maybe he could pick him back up.
Yeah, might be too late to build that case for all-star recognition just because of the lack of reps. Without him, we saw a lot of Magneuris Sierra. We saw with that Lewis Brinson renaissance. I know Alex is eating that up, the few nice games that he had before now he's hurt. But he's about to start a rehab assignment as well. We'll see how he factors into this team moving forward. We got more Adam Duvall in center field. People didn't even know that Duvall could do that. He'd never kind of been put in that position in the majors as a center fielder. And then all of a sudden, age 32, he's playing pretty much, I don't want to make downplay, the return of Starling, but Duvall was pretty great out there, defensively when they had to use him there. So that was important, knowing that he could handle that. If for whatever reason something goes wrong with Marte, he's not quite the same guy. It's worth noting that they did have to rush this process a little bit. He only played in 2 rehab games at AAA before getting called up. And, to me, I was surprised by this. I thought they were going to wait almost a whole week, just get him those reps down there to get his timing back at the plate. That's usually what it takes. But this is kind of by necessity because of how much we saw, the lineup struggle over the past week at home. So I don't know. Maybe that's just my concern. I think, Alex, you might speak better to that in terms of the fact that he only got 2 games, 6 plate appearances during that rehab assignment before getting brought back. What you think realistically, he's not going to jump back in and be quite the same guy at the plate right away, you think, right? Because it might take a little time for him to regain everything that we expect from him as that impact player.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I don't think that it's realistic to expect him to come back and jump back on the pace that he was on. I think it will take a bit, probably a week or so for him to get the feel for the game again, get used to seeing big league pitching. Didn't see a lot of AAA pitching, as you just mentioned. So, yeah, really quick rehab, like you said, it's by necessity. He has to be here. So normally a guy would get, at least a week's worth of reps in the minors, maybe a little bit less, maybe 5, 6, 7 games, definitely more than 2. So, yeah, he needs to be here right now because the Marlins don't have anybody else, and apparently he is healthy. If he wasn't healthy, he wouldn't be here. So he looks fine in the little work I saw from him watching the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp. He looked okay. Health-wise, he's running fine. Everything looks fine. It's just, just getting back into the swing of things. It's going to take a bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, on the same subject, we still have you, Alex, the other Marte, doubling up on those guys on this roster at the time, calling up Luis Marte, who's an infielder, 10 years in the minors to get to this point. And just walk us through what we know about him so far, because this is his first year in the organization. There's only, a limited opportunity to actually see him play and to get those reps at AAA. And now he gets called up in that aftermath of the Miguel Rojas injury. But what should we know about Luis? No relation to Starling.
Yeah, so it's a necessity move, of course. The Marlins need an infielder. He's literally the only guy that made sense in this spot. You got Joe Dunand hurt. Eddie Alvarez is going to the Olympics, so he's on the temporarily inactive list with Jacksonville. And Joe Dunand, we haven't seen him since the second game of the series. Maybe if Joe Dunand was healthy, this is a spot you may see him. Unfortunately, he hasn't played since very early in the season, and the only other guy that made sense is playing for Team USA. The Shrimp, by the way, with two players going to Olympic qualifiers. J.D. Osborne's the other one, so good luck to them. Marte is the only guy that made sense in this spot. He plays. I mentioned him on our last podcast. I'm sure I posted the clip on Twitter if you guys want to really listen to it. He's a guy that I called out as a guy that had been doing really well this past week with the Shrimp. He's mostly like that single slashy hitter. Decent speed. Like you said, long career in the minors, 3 different stops. Marlins are his third. He did participate in spring training, so obviously the Marlins wanted to see if he could bring anything in that utility type role, and I think he can. I think it's unrealistic to expect too much, but you like that he has added a little bit of power this year. He had 3 homers, the latest of which was not too long ago, just a couple games ago. So what's he going to do? He's going to be that utility guy. He can play literally everywhere. He's already played at 5 positions with the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp this year, so he can play all over the field and the outfield. So, yeah, just a guy that the Marlins need right now. It's the only guy that made sense. He's here for that reason, and hopefully he can do something. He's 27 years old. Hopefully he can show a little bit of something, and we'll see what happens. Not a big piece of the future, but we'll see.
It was, if I saw that correctly, it's outside your top 100 prospects at the moment, which is, that's saying something. When you're ranking 100 guys in the same farm system and he's not quite even making that cut, it just goes to show that relatively low expectations.
I mean, you kind of have to look at it from the standpoint that we mentioned on our last podcast, Eli, that our top 100, it goes a lot based off of future value to the organization. And a guy that's 27 years old, he spent 10 years in the minor leagues. It's not a lot of future value. Another guy like Eddie Alvarez, he's down in the 90s on our list. Good baseball player, great athlete, we know that, but not a lot of future value to the Marlins. So that has a lot to do with how we rank our guys, maybe in comparison with other lists who rank guys in terms of where they are in their development and how close they are to being major league players. Our list is a little different in that regard, so just something to take into account.
Yeah, looking forward to tonight's game. Hopefully we get tonight's game in. I mean, I checked the Boston weather. They have some rain coming in there, like in the middle of the game, pretty much. So it sounds like they're going to get started on time, but the question is whether they get through the whole thing tonight or suspended and have to finish it later. The starting pitcher is going to be Cody Poteet, and we've had some good things to say about him because he's been good every single time he's taken the mound so far this year. Pretty much three for three in solid starts. And he's just coming off his best one of the year so far. Isaac, this is probably his toughest test so far. I mean, the Red Sox are right up there in runs scored across the league. They're even better than usual when they face righties like Poteet is. And, I mean, I guess one of the big storylines of this series is that the Marlins finally get to use the DH for the first time, but obviously so does the other team, and that gives them a long lineup to go against. So what are you looking for with Poteet tonight? What are your expectations? Seeing that, I mean, it's a tough matchup for him. A lot to prove, I guess, right here.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a different ball game when you're facing with the DH over there. But luckily, like you said, we have it as well. I'm going to be looking to see his composure. You know, going to Fenway Park, it's going to be a little intimidating probably at first. One, because of what it is, Fenway Park. You know, the history behind it, and also, you know, a little fly ball to left field might go off the wall. It's a very hitter-friendly ballpark, and I guess I'm gonna look to see if he can keep the ball on the ground, use that changeup the way he did the last start against the Mets, which was really, really good. And if he's able to do that, I'd love to see some length out of him, and, you know, keep the ball in the yard. And I think he'll be more than capable of doing it. I've really liked what I've seen from him. I was not expecting that, and I've liked it a lot.
Yeah, I think Poteet has shocked us a lot, and as well as the Boston Red Sox, we did not expect this kind of a season for these guys.
No.
And Poteet's for sure going to face maybe the hardest lineup he has. You have players like Kike Hernandez, Alex Verdugo, JD Martinez. That's just the first 3 batters, followed by Xander Bogaerts, Rafael Devers. And after that, you have other guys like Marwin Gonzalez and Hunter Renfroe, who are well known. This is going to be a huge test for Poteet. This is maybe the best team he's faced out of all the teams that he has started against. He's only started 3 games. His ERA is at a 1.06. So, I mean, we just have to see what he could bring. I think he could get it done tonight if the offense gives him run support. That's what they need right now. And I think Marte for sure is a huge impact to that run support that the Marlins need to help out these pitchers. Not just Poteet, but the bullpen as well.
So big thing for both Trevor and Poteet that go tonight. It's going to be Trevor's only second time since his first start, I believe, throwing to Jorge Alfaro, and Cody Poteet's first time ever throwing to Jorge Alfaro. They had both been caught mostly by Sandy Leon, and I think Trevor was caught a little bit by Wallach. So, yeah, something to pay attention to there, how Alfaro calls these guys, because it's his first time doing so. And as Isaac said, in such an environment as Fenway Park, I actually asked Donnie about that before the game in the availability today. And he said he doesn't really want to see them change anything. He wants to see them be the same guys they are. As Kevin said, they may get a little intimidated because, of course, the dimensions of Fenway Park and playing in such a historic site among such a great fan base like the Red Sox have. So, yeah, I mean, he wants to see that intimidation kind of put aside for both Poteet and Rogers and for them to just stick to their game plans. But I think the Alfaro factor is something interesting to pay attention to.
I mean, let me think about that. Alfaro has started. He played 2 of those games in the Philly series. On Tuesday and then on Wednesday. I mean, there's not a whole lot to.
It was Sandy and I believe it was Trevor, if I'm not mistaken, the 2 guys he got.
Right. Yeah, and with Sandy, he was pretty great, except for that one mistake he made to Rhys Hoskins. That was really the whole difference. But otherwise, I mean, Sandy only allowed 1 other hit for that entire game.
I was at that game, and I was at the game with my family, and wow, was Sandy brilliant. He was the 99-mile-an-hour singers. He was just locating them perfectly all day long. Just one mistake, and Rhys Hoskins, it was after like the dust back pitch up and in, and he just left one mistake all day long. 8 innings, he pitched magnificently. He pitched better than I think it was Velasquez pitching that day. That was a shame. That was a bad loss to be a part of.
Yeah.
When Sandy is on top of his game, that's what we've seen, even dating back to like 2019. That like he individually, like he's the guy that has that highest ceiling when everything is going right. Like it's been a big topic, of course, around the game about how many no hitters there have been, and it's kind of surprising that we're like this deep into the year, and the Marlins, even with all their arms that they have, and also with all the questions on their offense, you'd think that like they're the one team that would either throw no hitter by this point or get no hit by this point, and they haven't really come close yet. But I think when Sandy starts, whenever he starts, so there's always that opportunity there because he's the guy that if nothing else, he gives you length. Like he goes really deep into his game. So if the things line up, if the defense is playing the right way for him, and of course if he's executing, then he's the guy that can start a game and finish it himself if he has that intact. He's starting this weekend again, but is he 1, 2, 3? Yeah, on Tuesday. Yeah, so he'll start the final game of this series.
Yeah.
It's going to be a tough matchup for him to do it in this case because of what we've already said about the Red Sox. All those guys, they got a lineup both from the right side and the left side. It's a deep lineup, and it's a team that like caught people off guard because last year they were worse than the Marlins were. I mean, last year they were one of the worst teams in baseball, and but they've got you got to respect like the talent they put together, some of the decisions they made this offseason as well to like tidy things up. That it's one of the better teams that they faced so far this season.
Yeah, I was about to say that. I would go out on a limb and say this is definitely the best lineup. I think, because of all the other injuries in the division, this is one of the best lineups they faced all year long. No doubt about it. They also have Tristan Casas and Delbecq in the minors. It's going to be a good team, Boston. I was pleasantly surprised by them.
Yeah, their offense is super good, second best offense in the league. So, yeah, you got to watch out for their offense, especially in Fenway Park. Among their fan base, everything that we just said. But I think their pitching's a little susceptible. Their pitching's like middle of the road in terms of team ERA, and these last 3 games they've been pretty bad. So I think there is room for the Marlins to move in, get some games here. Hopefully they get 2 out of 3.
Yeah, this is a Boston lineup that's it's deadly. Their offense is deadly. Their pitching is mid-tier, like Alex said. So we'll see how it goes for the Marlins. I think if they just get to the pitching early, we should be at least in line to win 2 out of the 3. We'll talk about predictions later, but this is a good Boston team. I mean, there's not much you could do when this offense gets to you. If they get to you, it's pretty much over, unless the other team's offense just gets it going too.
Right. Like that 2017 Marlins team, it reminds me of a little bit. The pitching just not quite there, and that offense, wow, was that an offensive team?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, man.
That was so much fun.
That was never
That
the
was-
problem with the team, and that was that's a great thing. And I feel that's something that honestly, in hindsight, people could like downplay that a little bit, knowing that the team wasn't put together quite the way you wanted it to, and the depth wasn't there in the organization when those injuries popped up. But yeah, I think that gets underrated how much fun that was to see those guys. And the Red Sox are going through the same thing right now.
Right. Ozuna was an MVP. If it were not for Stan, he would have been an MVP. And Giancarlo. And wow, I just get goosebumps thinking about how fun that team was to watch. Every single day, Giancarlo was going yard to right. It was just awesome. I remember it. It's one of my most fun summers because of that team. But man, pitching, you need pitching, as everyone says. Can't have Tom Kohler and Wei Chen putting out big innings.
Wei
And right, and I mean now it's kind of the flip situation for the Marlins, where of course they have this long window coming up ahead where they hope that the hitting and the pitching both peak at the right time. In the moment, it's that scramble to find these replacements because they've had these injuries pile up. That was what my podcast yesterday was mainly about, just running through everything. The good news was Starling getting back here, but obviously the bad news in that Brian Anderson out for the foreseeable future. Several weeks. They still need to evaluate a little more to decide exactly what the timeline is and exactly how to treat his shoulder issue. And it's the same situation with Miggy Rowe. And wait to see what happens with this finger injury. Just bring up Miggy Rowe real quick. It happens on in that 8th inning just yesterday, reaching back on a pickoff attempt. It was the 9th time this year that the Marlins have been picked off. They've been picked off more than any other team in baseball this year. And this was an issue last year as well. So I don't want to dwell too much on that, but just your quick takes on exactly how that how that's kind of been something that is holding this Marlins team back a little bit. We know that they have some limitations in terms of the actual quality hitters that they can bring up, but it's a way that you can help your offense is by doing smart base running. And the fact, I guess, Kevin, we'll go to you just quickly on that. The fact that that ended up making such a key difference in the game, with him representing the potential go ahead run, gets picked off, gets hurt, and the Marlins eventually lose. That's one thing that they'll have to improve on the base running front.
Yeah, that was not smart base running by Miggy Rowe. I do not know why he was that far away from first base in the first place. He had Devers on second, so you wouldn't have been able to steal second unless they were going to do a double steal kind of situation. And then the worst part about it is you get injured and you dislocate your finger, which it did not look good when they showed that finger on camera for the split second it was on there. But I mean, at the end of the day, it happens. You get injured you get injured in any sport in this moment. And I mean, it was just a little bit of it was just not smart. The base running that Miggy was trying to do right there. I know he's trying to get this team to win, but at the end of the day, you got yourself out, and it might have cost the game for the Marlins in this scenario because Cooper, I think it was Cooper who got the RBI. And it was a nice RBI. I think it would have driven both runners to get that win.
Yeah, I mean, I think that other teams know when your offense is struggling, and they're going to know to look for those kind of things. Other teams know that the Marlins offense is struggling right now. They know that they're going into series hurt. They know that they're patching things together, and you can't force offense. And I think that's what they're trying to do a little bit too much, is trying to force offense. Another thing I'm not going to put it all on him, and he's a great guy. I don't want to talk bad about him. But Trey Hillman is not impressive to me as a third base coach. I think he's made some bad calls and sending guys, maybe some signs missed, stuff like that, maybe some crossover on signs. So, yeah, I mean, everything put together, you can't force offense. And then just to compound it, Trey Hillman, I don't think has been great as a Marlins third base coach. So
that's funny that you say that. I had noticed a few times this year. It was just this year. I didn't notice it before, but this year I had noticed a few times. Some hit and runs, some like bad calls where you don't call a hit and run. I've seen it a few times now, and I thought he was supposed to be some sort of base running guru over here, but I don't know. I haven't been impressed. They have sent guys when they're out by a mile. I remember I think Wallach was thrown out at home by a couple. It is Wallach, so it's not all his fault, but they are trying to force the offense when you just can't do it.
That's the player I would never send to home if it was.
Bro, I don't care if that ball's in the warning track, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the flip side, Trey Hillman is largely responsible for what they do fielding wise and positioning those guys on defense, and that's actually something that I think this team is great at.
Right.
Yeah, that's dating all the way back to like spring training. I thought, man, I mean, even though individually I've never been someone that like necessarily believes that Miguel Rojas is a superstar defender, but he's in the right spots, and when he gets into the right spots, he's just so skilled out there, and and I think someone like Trey Hillman has put him in a great position to succeed, as well as those other guys, and it's one reason why that's been a strength of this team. One reason why there's still some hope, even for this defense without Miggy Rowe for the near future, without Brian Anderson, that the individual talent replacing them defensively isn't going to be quite the same. But they have somebody in Trailman, and I'm sure he has help from the front office and, really scouting that stuff and figuring out exactly where to put your fielders. So I think we could be, pleasantly surprised by how decently they play defensively, even without those guys missing from the left side of the infield. We do have a lineup change that came out, just a few minutes ago. All of a sudden, Adam Duvall was in there originally as the DH, and now he's out. Instead, it's Alfaro moves up to the 6th spot, and then Isan still playing second. Sandy Leon, the DH. Sandy Leon, I never thought he'd be a DH, man. I mean, he is
catcher of the DH.
With all due respect, Sandy, he had those couple hits in his very first Marlins game, and ever since then he's given them nothing offensively, despite all the positives that he does with his intangibles behind the plate. So that's an interesting decision there. And it goes to show you, I guess this actually brings us to Jazz, the fact that Jazz isn't in the lineup, even though they have that DH spot open. He's been battling this mild ankle sprain. Before the game, he was taking grounders. He was taking batting practice. It's good signs that he'll probably avoid the injured list. But it's yet another day where, he's not – I guess he's not even available just to be a DH. That's been something that obviously came back to bite them last game, where you lose by just 1 run in all those games. Someone like Jazz can make the difference. That I think
I guess that would be a good time. Now would be a good time to talk about why with Duvall going down, what a great time would be to have Cooper in DH and Jesus Sanchez in right field, huh?
Don't get me started. I think.
So, tell me what a great time to have Jesus Sanchez up in right field and Cooper instead in that big right field in Fenway Park. And have Gary Cooper manning the outfield. I don't get it. And
Corey Dickerson in left. So
Corey Dickerson in left, and boy, I just can't imagine so many balls going to the monster, and he's just not going to play them well. But whatever. Say we have Sandy Leon at DH. It's going to be fun, guys. It's going to be fun.
I don't know. I would have put Alfaro in this case at DH and at least Sandy to catch. I think Alfaro in this case would benefit more on DH.
Yeah,
a guy like Poteet who knows Sandy Leon better than Alfaro in this case.
Yeah, it's an interesting call because this comes very last minute. It comes within an hour of the game starting. So you would think that I'm not intimately familiar about exactly what their prep process is before a start, but maybe if Poteet and Alfaro together were planning certain things about this outing, how they would attack certain hitters, that might be a factor there as to why they wanted to keep it the same way. Because all things considered, that's a good point that Sandy's been the one working with Poteet already. That familiarity would help when it comes to this one opponent. Maybe individually, because they had this planned out in advance, that Alfaro was one talking things over with him, and because of that reason, they didn't want to disrupt things. So that's my theory on that. We'll obviously find out more afterwards when it comes to this, including whether or not Adam Duvall is okay. That's another story.
Yeah. I think you're right on the game planning thing. I think before starts, a lot of these teams, most teams, I would say, they look over film together. The battery looks over film together. They're game planning already. They're deciding how to attack hitters and stuff. So, yeah, you probably didn't want to switch that up, even though, as Kevin said, Sandy's been the guy that's caught Cody Poteet and knows him better than Jorge Alfaro. So probably just didn't want to mix up that game planning, at the last minute. But you hate to think injury on Adam Duvall. I really, really, really hope it's not another injury. But anytime a guy gets cut from a lineup this soon before a game, red flag.
As we are joined barely half an hour before first pitch by Daniel Rodriguez as well to help us prepare for it.
Doing?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy right now. That we just had this last lineup switch to have Sandy Leon as your starting DH for tonight's game. This is not when we mapped out. Looking forward to the fact that finally the Marlins get to use a DH. He's the last guy that came to mind as the one you want to create extra at bat for. So that's pretty interesting. And nice jersey you got there. That's a Sugar Kings right there.
Yeah, Sugar Kings. I got that, I think, maybe the day or so after they dropped it. I was like, okay, I have to get it almost immediately. Went to the stadium, and I had to go look for it. I wanted to get a Jazz, but they only had Brian Anderson, so I had to go with just the original no name on the back.
No, I would have gone Brian Anderson.
And yeah, so looking forward to this game. Trying to figure out where they're going to get their offense from tonight. The other cool storyline to this one is the meeting of the cousins between Jose Devers and Rafael Devers. I mean, his older cousin, kind of since the day he stepped into the big leagues, in like 2017, he's one of the better hitters out there, and having another pretty good season for the Red Sox now. And Jose Devers, I think we should just mention, I guess we'll go to Alex on this. What we've seen from Jose Devers now, this is his second tour of duty in the majors. You don't really want him in the big leagues right now. He's kind of there by necessity because he's on the 40-man roster and because they're down now. Up to the moment, they're down 3 infielders, without BA, without Miggy Rowe, and saying that Jazz is still limited because of his ankle, that he's kind of been forced into the situation. But he had some nice moments during that Phillies series.
Yeah, I mean, really nice to see him get that 2-hit game, first career multi-hit game. That was awesome. He was really excited about it afterwards, said it was great to help the team win. So a good confidence-building game for him. I think you're right, though. I think he's another guy that's only here out of necessity, just because he's so young. I mean, this guy hasn't played much at the AAA level. They were going to challenge him. I believe he was originally going to start in AA. It turns out they decided to challenge him and put him in AAA. So, I mean, yeah, it's already a steep challenge for a kid that was just playing in single A ball, low A ball with the Jupiter Hammerheads and got hurt doing so in 2019. So he was already getting that big push up to the AAA level. You need him here right now. It's good to see him succeeding. Really cool, especially for such a young guy. You see the signs in him, but yeah, I mean, it's a big challenge, and it's good. It'll be cool to see him continue to succeed, but I would temper expectations personally.
Yeah, Devers was great in the Phillies series. I think if hopefully he could take this into the Boston series. I mean, Devers had his good moments for sure. I mean, he drove in runs. We'll see what happens. And with Duvall, someone just told me it's a side injury with Duvall.
Great.
That's why he stretched.
Precautionary left side discomfort. These guys are made of glass, man. It's crazy.
It was suspicious when they had him as DH for this game. I mentioned it from the Fish Stripes account that you have Starling Marte. He's just coming off of his injury. He barely got to get into any rehab games. And you have Garrett Cooper, and we just know that Cooper had his little injury scare, oblique tightness, and just generally speaking, Cooper has been bad in right field this year, even like compared to his usual stuff. So under normal circumstances, if Duvall was all right, then he's the guy that you would definitely play in the field over either Cooper or Marte in this game. And the fact that they didn't, and it turns out, oh boy. So, Duvall, I mean, just to get some thoughts on Duvall overall this year, it's been fascinating, man, because he's been even better defensively than I think anybody could have imagined. He's been one of the most valuable defensive outfielders in all of baseball. And the fact that he was able to step in center field and play that for a handful of games was huge. And as a hitter, he doesn't get on base. He strikes out a ton. But when he does do damage, it comes in the most important spots. That's why he's right up there with one of the league leaders in runs batted in. Like, even though, the overall catch-all value stats on him are not very good just because he's not getting on base, he's made it count when he does actually come through. And overall, he's been worth the money, don't you think? In terms of the guy, not exactly the guy they thought they were signing, but overall, he's been a lot more good than bad from him to this point in the year.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think you would love to see that, that OPS be higher than what it is. But, he has provided the power. He doesn't get on base a lot, which is what we knew. But, boy, I've been pleasantly surprised with the defense. I did not know that he was this good of a defender in the outfield. And, it is nice, especially in spacious Marlins Park that's unnecessarily too big. It's nice, But, yeah, I would say that was definitely a successful signing. It was our only, offensive signing, which still bugs me a little bit. But he's come through in a big situation. He's provided the pop. But, yeah, I would like to see him going a little bit more, be a little more consistent, and we'll see.
When it comes to Duvall, there's some games that he's pretty much won it for us. The Dodgers games, he won them both pretty much with his 3-1 shots. The Phillies one, he won a game pretty much. He put it 9-2. So Duvall's been a good offensive piece, and I think he surprised us a lot on the defensive end as well. When it comes to playing center field, I think when he held that down pretty well during the absence of Starling Marte. So I mean, he's out right now with the side injury. We'll see what happens. And when it comes to the DH, I think I would have rather seen a guy like Cooper go there on the DH and maybe put Sierra, since it's our only other option at this outfield.
Yeah, I think what you miss in Duvall is the clutch hitting, as Eli mentioned. Just to go through a stat real quick, this is probably his best situation. 2 outs with runners in scoring position. He's 11 for 25 this year with 4 home runs. So, yeah, a guy that just comes up and he's able to save innings. He's able to get the job done. So, yeah, you're going to miss that clutch ability of Adam Duvall. So, hopefully he's not out for too long. You hear side, you think oblique, but see what happens. And just to mention it real quick, I think your biggest free agent signing this year for the Marlins will have to be a new strength and conditioning coach.
There was that panic. There was that panic in like mid-April when Jazz and Starling and Eliezer all went down at the same time, and then I mean there was Brian Anderson's original injury, and then things kind of mellowed out, and it looks like the team was just getting healthier, and then getting this again. It is worth putting into perspective. You know, we just played the Mets and the Phillies, and both those teams are worse off probably from an injury front than even the Marlins are. So I think there's a lot of teams that either need to rethink the way they handle injuries or just accept that this is a crazy season coming off the shortened season, that there was just no game plan to how to keep guys ready, to how to how to manage this at all. So we'll see how it plays out the rest of the year, but it's no doubt, I think for anybody, even if you realize other teams are going through it, to see some of the key players for this team, the ones that are the most, not just the most productive players, but the most recognizable players as well, go down. It's really deflating. It kind of affects fan interest in the team. I think that's worth noting that this team is right in the mix to contend in the division. They're only a couple games out, despite everything that's happened. But probably the enthusiasm around the team doesn't quite match up to that. Just because so many of these key guys that haven't seen as much of Starling and Jazz as they would want to, and they haven't seen any of Sixto, those are the type of players that really drive enthusiasm, whether you win or lose. So being without them has come back to hurt for sure. I think it's been a tough year for all baseball in that regard.
Not just us, and like you said, in the sport, the best names in the whole sport, man. Mike Trout, Fernando Tatis Jr., Bryce Harper, JT Realmuto, Pete Alonso, Michael Conforto. And that's just the ones I can name out. It's a shame for the sport, man. I hate to see it. I think they should have done 162. Maybe they should have done a couple more off days to make it 154, maybe. Because I'm a traditionalist. I won 162, but it's scary, man. Everyone is just getting bit by the injury bug. So I don't know what they're gonna do to fix it.
Yeah, it's up and down the league, as you guys said, but it just sucks when you see guy after guy after guy, and it's your biggest guys or the guys that are getting hit by this. It sucks. Yeah, I mean, everybody's navigating it. Marlins have been hit hard. Mets have been hit hard by it. We just saw that. So, yeah, I mean, it's not just us. It's all of baseball. So, I mean, I guess everything will even out in the long run. And I think when it does, our depth is what will show and make us, keep us right in that competitive spot. So, hope that happens. Hope the injuries stop because it's been kind of ridiculous.
No.
You can see in the forecast tonight in Boston that there was some rain coming, but according to Jordan McPherson from the Miami Herald, it's raining right now over there. So there's still some question as to whether they'll even get this started on time and whether they'll get this game in tonight. It creates an interesting problem because this is the only time the Marlins are making a trip to Boston. They would have to play a doubleheader either tomorrow or on Sunday. Now that I think, they haven't played a doubleheader this year, right? They have another one coming up against the Mets later in the year to make up for that situation. But this would be their first this year. And if they're going to be in that situation this year, fingers crossed that Jazz is healthy because you need everybody to get through those extra innings. And so I guess that's going to be a pretty big key. It's even more important than usual is for Jazz hopefully to feel taking some important steps forward today, taking batting practice, actually getting on his feet in drills. But yeah, they would need him, especially on the field, even more so if one of those double headers are going to pop up.
Oh.
Oh boy. And also with this Duvall issue, fingers crossed. If he was in the original lineup, that either goes to show maybe they mismanaged it, maybe it's a serious injury, or maybe they really thought it was a borderline case where he was almost ready to go. So he's another guy that would definitely benefit if they get this pushed back to a day.
Yeah, for sure. It would not, it wouldn't be horrible if this whole series got rained out. Give Jazz some time, give Duvall, give Cooper just some days, man. Like rain is not our enemy right now for sure. And that's sad, for the game of baseball.
Yeah. And you could also think of it like if this game, it gets a delay, we could think of possibly Poteet maybe not starting if Mattingly makes that change. So we have to think of it like that, maybe a bullpen game.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. If they do start on time, or even if it gets delayed and they start playing through the rain and you worry about an additional delay, then you don't want to burn Poteet, if he's not going to make a full length outing. And so thankfully, I mean, just yesterday, they got that great long outing from Pablo. It was pretty much the same thing that we talked about with Sandy, his timeout, where he made that one mistake, but otherwise he was pretty great, and he made it through 7 innings. So they only had to use 2 innings out of the bullpen yesterday. Most of the pen is pretty rested. We've seen, what is that? There's that great stat that I forget who pulled it up about how overall this team's been really bad in these bullpen games this year. It catches up to them. But this is one situation where you wouldn't mind at all, like leaning on your bullpen if you worry about playing through the rain and you save Poteet for another day, because they're still in that awkward situation with Eliezer Hernandez where he's making a rehab start tonight, just about now, weather permitting. I'm assuming the weather is all right over there where he's doing it. And after that, he could rejoin the rotation, but he's not even eligible yet for another 6 days. They have to wait until Pittsburgh series to get him back because he's got shifted to the 60-day IL. One way or another, they need to make it through these next 5 games, and that means if it's 5 games, then you're going to get a start from the 4 guys that you have available, and then we'll probably need a bullpen game anyway. Like even if it's a doubleheader coming up tomorrow, maybe that one of those are going to be a bullpen game regardless, right? Because Nick Neidert was the one that stepped in as the number 5 guy in this most recent turn. Now he's on the injured list, and he was replacing Jordan Holloway, he's on the IL, even though they seem to think that he'll be back relatively soon. In the meantime, they're still they haven't totally crossed the bridge on having this lack of rotation depth, and that's the thing that we've been kind of hauling all year, right? I'll go to Daniel on that about how it's been almost this entire season. It's for the most part they've been leaning on 3 starters until they finally got Poteet to emerge as this my phone. But until Poteet emerged as this really capable guy that they somehow made it all this way without having any rotation depth whatsoever.
Yeah, I think the Marlins, when they found out what they got from Cody Poteet after a couple starts, probably thanking themselves or just maybe thanking someone to have someone like him in the rotation that could cover the 4 spot. He's been pretty good so far. I think his ERA is 1.08 around there. He's been really good, but it's just the 5th spot that they don't really know what to get from. You mentioned Jordan Holloway, Nick Neidert. We saw Daniel Castano in that role, and now he's down back in the minors. But it's just really just a rotation of guys who they have no idea who to have in the 5th spot until Eliezer comes back. Eventually, when Sixto does come back, but it seems like for that 5th spot, it's just going to be a rotation of bullpen games, just depending. Could be Adam Simber starting one game, Jordan Holloway when he comes back. Could it just be just a rotation? And we saw it last time that happened to the Marlins. It's not really the best thing to do. I'm still surprised they didn't pick up maybe just an older guy to go for that 5th spot like they did with Gio Gonzalez after he retired. Maybe pick up someone else, but I think it's kind of biting them in the back now, not getting prepared to have a 5th starter after the 2 injuries.
Yeah, when you look at it, the last bullpen game didn't go too well. Mattingly played 1 pitcher each inning. That hurt us big time in that extra inning game for sure with the Mets. You burned out Simber, and he just gave up that final hit to, I think it was Khalil Lee. I think when it comes to bullpen games, you just have to control them better. Not play a pitcher each inning. Maybe, players like Dylan Floro could have lasted maybe 2 innings. Bass could have gone 2 innings. Detweiler was solid 2 innings. So I think it's just a matter of control the bullpen games the right way and don't put a bullpen pitcher each inning, because Wallach was about to pitch 13th inning. Let's just remember that. I mean, that might have just lost us. That would have been fun. Immediate loss. Yeah.
I think Mattingly was up against it there because that was the game that Holloway got hurt in. Holloway was going to go more than what he did. And then of course he gets injured, and what do you do now? Like, I think that was kind of unforeseen. But yeah, I mean, the long-term ramification of it is what you have in the future. And it looks like, per the injury reports that we heard today, that Sixto and Edward Cabrera are not too far away. Like, they're getting closer and closer. They've had no setbacks. They're both throwing bullpens. The next would be one is throwing bullpens, one's throwing live BP. So they're kind of on the same schedule. I think Sixto is now back ahead of Edward Cabrera slightly, because I think Sixto is doing lives, whereas Edward's just doing bullpens. I think I have that right.
Yeah,
so
I think it's vice versa, actually. I think Sixto's the one throwing bullpens. Edward's the one who did live yesterday.
Yeah, they're very close. One is slightly ahead of the other, is what I mean to say. But they should be on a similar trajectory. I think probably realistically, you're looking at like late June, mid to late June to possibly early July. But you like to hear that they haven't had no setbacks and they're doing okay. So that's what you like to hear long term. And in the meantime, I mean, Neidert hurt now. The only other guys you have are Braxton Garrett and Dan Castano. So I think even after Eliezer gets back, you're still looking at bullpen games. So yeah, we'll see what they do. I mean, you got Tommy Eveld coming back as well. Maybe he factors in. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is for right now, and they're going to do bullpen games for a little while longer. But that's going to do it for me, guys. I got to go. Good to be with you.
Yep.
Maybe they shouldn't have gotten rid of Jose Reyna, man.
Right here, I got him right here. The bobblehead, the GOAT, doing actually pretty decent in Detroit. Just not getting any run support there, but
he's been decent. His ERA is like 4.0 something, bro. Like, we gotta use that, honestly.
Yeah. And just with everything right now with the Marlins, having to bring up Luis Marte, and I was just looking him up a little. 27-year-old, has over 3,000 at bats in the minors, over 700 hits. I just really wanted to see what he brings to the Marlins. Maybe they use him today. Maybe a little surprised and then put him in the DH spot.
Yeah,
and put Sandy there, since we all know what we're going to get from Sandy. But for Luis, it's kind of like, all right, let's put him in there and let's see what he could do against the major leaguers.
Yeah, and also when you think of it, I mean, if Alfaro goes, let's say Alfaro, hopefully he doesn't, but if he goes down and Sandy's at DH, can you just move him to the catcher spot and they put in a new DH, or how would that work, Eli?
Well, you lose the DH if you insert your DH to a defensive position like that. So they could bring him in, but then they would need to pinch hit every single time that the DH spot comes up again. It kind of reverts to the National League rules in that situation, which would, that'd be interesting. I got kicked out of the stream for a couple minutes. My internet was like crapping out on me. So I think we're going to wrap this up a little bit early, just because I'm worried about whether my Wi-Fi is going to hold up, just with predictions for this series coming up. These next, well, I guess predictions are kind of dumb to make, and we don't know exactly if this game is going to be played tonight or all that, but I guess we'll take a crack at it. Do your best, Kevin. We'll start with you and then go around trying to figure out how this series is going to play out, even though we're not sure when these games are going to be played or how many innings the games are going to be. Do your best.
Yeah, I mean, this is for sure a hard one, because I mean, you might have your two best pitchers, Rogers and Alcantara, out there. I think Miami loses this one tonight for sure. I mean, especially now that Duvall's out, I had them winning, but I think they'll lose, and I think they'll win. I think they'll win tomorrow. Sunday's up there, but I think they'll win. I think they'll take 2 out of 3. I think I'm reaching a little bit. I'm dreaming a little bit, but I'll go 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
Go to you, Isaac.
Honestly speaking, let's say I think they lose tonight. I think they lose tomorrow. I think they win on Sunday. They sort of like the Dodgers series. I think they maybe lose the first 2, and I think like that Sunday afternoon day seems to be our stopper for some reason. Like, it just seems to work that way. I think Sunday they win, and I'll say that they win 1 out of 3. They go to the next series, 3 games under 500.
Okay. Yeah, that was really close to saying that too, but I mean, now that
we got to be optimistic. It's fish strikes. We got to be optimistic too, you know.
Yeah.
We also got to keep it real.
Now,
we don't have.
Yeah, no, we don't have to, but like, it'd be kind of depressing if all of us said we're gonna get swept, guys.
Yeah, I was gonna say that initially at the start. I was thinking.
Oh yeah, honestly speaking, they'll definitely capture a win. Probably 2 out of 3, but I'm just like realistically maybe at least 1 for sure.
If it's a doubleheader, for sure. I mean, I think Marlins have been pretty successful in doubleheaders.
Yeah, that's what got them in the playoffs.
So I think they could win a doubleheader easily. So I think that's why If it is a doubleheader, for sure 2 out of 3.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think they are really pretty well positioned even now. It's not so much about last year because it's a different team this year in different situation, but because how deep this bullpen is, I mean, we just mentioned that the bullpen games this year have been a problem for them over 9 innings, or if they go 12 innings, as they did in that one situation. You don't want a bullpen game for 12 innings, but if it's 7 innings, then that's a different story. They really have 7 quality guys that you could trust, but definitely 3 or 4 that you love that you can almost tie together the game all by themselves between like Yimi and Anthony Bender and Floro. And it's depending on the matchup, either Richard Blyer or John Curtis. Like there are certain days where you line those guys up, you can definitely see them against a great lineup, really putting it all together. So that's going to be a key. Not being in Boston myself, I'll just make an educated guess that this game tonight either gets postponed or it gets like suspended, where they might get a lot of innings in but have to cut it off at some point and then continue it later in the weekends. And so making that assumption, I feel good about them winning 1 game. I don't think I could go much past that, just because the fact that tonight that it's clear that Jazz is still so limited. He can't even DH. That just goes to show that he's still at least a full day away from contributing really in any way. So that's a big setback to go on top of course, all these other injuries. And over this last homestand, it's kind of a miracle that they won most games on that homestand, 4 out of 7, knowing that how badly the offense performed. That they scored runs at times. They had a couple games where they really tied runs together. But they just did not hit for power at all, aside from Cooper. Cooper was the only one. I need to double check. Was he the only one that hit a home run for the Marlins on that entire homestand? Because he hit a couple of them, but it was kind of him all by himself. And he's totally fine right now. And he's going to be a big part of this series.
Duvall.
Yeah, Duvall. Right. So Duvall had 1 as well. And we know that on the road, for whatever reason, Jesus Aguilar kind of snaps into something in himself that at home he hasn't been doing much. On the road, he's been one of the best offensive players in baseball. Like, bottom line, there's no ball fires. He's just been on another level for those games. So that's going to be, I guess that'll be the key, is whether Aguilar, for whatever reason, snaps into that again and comes up with a couple big hits. But yeah, I'll lean towards them just winning 1 out of 3. In this series, and then they got that off day coming up after that to hopefully regroup everything, and it's still not in a bad spot. I think that's kind of what I've been emphasizing, on here through all our platforms the last few days. Despite all the adversity they're facing, especially recently, I mean, the team is in fine shape. All the goals they have for this year are still alive somehow, despite all the absences that they have. It's going to be about exactly how all these spare pieces fill in, and how Don Mattingly juggles all these pieces. So that's the predictions for us. They might not mean anything depending on exactly when these games get played this weekend in Boston. But yeah, the start of a 9-game road trip, I think. Yeah, 3 cities, 9 games. It's a huge. The Marlins they've had some wacky scheduling this year with these long road trips, and they were able to just do enough to navigate the past couple. And then I believe after this, they don't have another one that's quite this excessive the rest of the year. So they they need to take just 1 out of 3 in this series and kind of do the same moving forward before really turning a corner and hopefully running off an extended win streak. But that's going to do it for us here as we trying to figure out exactly what is going on with this team, with Duvall, with the other injury situations, with the weather and all that. That's Ken Burrell, Isaac Azut, Daniel Rodriguez, Alex Carver with us earlier, Eli Sussman. Thanks to everybody for joining us. Yeah, we'll be back with another stream for the next series and a whole lot of coverage in between now and then. Go Fish.